Corey Henderson, hardest working man in the civics act business. Do you have an update for us, sir?
Oh, yes, I do.
Well, let's have it.
The most recent release of the app has a new feature called Share Progress. So the original canvassing app was what I called minimum viable product. And you could see everybody's data when you exported the spreadsheet. But when you looked at the map, you only saw your own data. Well, now with the Share Progress setting, the form creator by default sees everybody's data on their phone. And if they select Share Progress, so does everybody else in there.
Wow. And is it almost in real time that way?
If everybody has autosync, which is another feature that's out now, turned on, then almost in real time, yes.
That is the linchpin for the canvassing, my friend. Wow. That's awesome.
Thank you. And what's funny is Share Progress wasn't the goal of this release. It just was made easy by what I did for the goal of the release. And the goal of the release was to accept an imported data. So someone can put their walk list or their voter list or a list of addresses and names that they got from somewhere into the app.
Okay. So like the leader of the group that's going out to do the canvassing for whatever reason is able to distribute what those lists are to different groups?
Yeah, so that was the goal, was to have the app capable of taking that data from an import. It was a lot of work to get that done, but then I realized how much little work was left to make it Share Progress be possible.
Interesting.
And what's funny is the import tool isn't done yet, but the Share Progress is. So the app can accept data input from an import from a tool that doesn't exist yet. It's funny.
Very interesting. Is that coming out soon?
Yes, that's pretty much next on the list. It's going to be a web app because most of the time your import file or your data file is on your computer. And even if it was on your phone, if it's a web app, you can still access it from your phone. It's just most people are going to be doing this from their computer. You log into Dropbox from this web app and you upload the file. It does its processing, and then you see them as pins on the map on your mobile device.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man.
There's a guy that I've known for several years. Love him to death. He's running for State House. And I don't know what it was, but he is very excited to use this app. And I have more than once thanked him for having the guts to do it, because it seems that there's so many people that don't want to use something that's new. And there have been some growing pains, sure, but nothing catastrophic. He's amazed by how fast I've been turning around some of the stuff that we talk about. In fact, one of the problems he was having was the keyboard on the survey form would cover the bottom question, and he couldn't scroll it up. And I was able to get that resolved and out in a couple days, and he was just, slapstick happy about that. But it's a mutually beneficial relationship, because by me observing him using it and his team using it, I get to see outside of my own bubble, because I'm hyper technical and they're anything but. And they're all smart people. They're just, computers aren't the thing they do. And the kinds of questions they ask, and I'd never thought about it that way. And it's frustrating to me, not in a bad way, but in a push me to make it better and easier to use, and grit my teeth through the uncomfortableness that is watching people use this in ways that was never intended.
Now, when you say you're watching them use it, I am to assume that this is a testing mode, so you're able to actually see what they're doing. But
no, me observing them use it. It's like I went over to his house.
Sounds like you're on your computer watching people use their data, and that would translate to you're watching me use the app now.
Well, in fact, if you're worried about that, the app was designed so I can't do that. It is decentralized. The code does not send telemetry of any kind to a place that I can view it.
Okay, so decentralized data, that's how this app works. So is it basically anything that someone does with this app on their phone gets stored on their phone and doesn't go back to another server that we operate, correct?
Correct. Currently, it goes to Dropbox on their account. So yep. I guess technically the bigwigs at Dropbox could see what they're doing, but I can't.
I guess it boils down to a matter of trust with Dropbox, which I'm pretty sure everybody can trust Dropbox at this point.
Right, and we're not married to Dropbox in that we can't do anything else. We could code in to use something else. It's just Dropbox was the easiest, the path of least resistance.
I see. So if some group had their own technology that was similar to Dropbox that they wanted to be able to use the app with, you could easily switch that out.
Correct, and it's open source, so I wouldn't even switch it out. It's like, well, I'm a programmer and I don't trust anybody with anything. I'm going to write my own server, and I'm going to take the code and change it so it points at my server, and then it only ever goes to anything that I control.
Oh, there you go.
And that's totally fine and cool. And anyway, so the first time I go sit down with him, he creates the form on the device and then sees Dropbox on his computer, ding that it got a new file, and he goes, "Oh, cool!" And the very first thing he does is renames the folder, and I like. My hands go up to my head, and I'm like, what are you doing?
And so if he renames the folder, people can't send anything to him, right?
Well, I didn't know what the consequences of that, but I'd never thought that the thought of someone doing that had never occurred to me. So I did go and see what would happen, and I was not surprised that it would have broke in all kinds of ways. So I put in something to address that. Now, that doesn't mean it's completely addressed, but it's that kind of thing that as a programmer, you don't experience until someone uses it.
So as you come across these things, you said you put in something to address that. Is that a pop-up that'll remind you, or is that part of the script where people can go to get pointers and tips on how to use the canvassing?
Well, in this particular case, it's kind of like having the carpet ripped out from under you.
Yeah.
And what it is at this point anyway is if you rename the folder, the app will throw an error when you try and sync, but if you restart the app, it'll work.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That sounds like a fix to me.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. If you get a sync error, restart the app.
That sounds like the fix for everything technology, right? Did you unplug it and plug it back in again? Yeah.
Is it turned on? So there's a lot of things like that, and some more improvements and optimizations to make it easier to use. For example, here's another thing that he did was there's the default form and full name is one of the items. Well, he didn't want it to be the first item, and there was no way to move it down, so he made full name the second item, but when he entered it back in, the key was slightly different. It wasn't exactly what the default was, so whenever you pulled up a taken survey on the app, it would say full name, not available, even though it existed. And what I ended up doing is, well, I don't rely on the hard key now. I just look for keys that match name, and then it determines, oh, well, the way you said full name is not the way I said full name, but we can both agree that it's name.
Wow, so that's almost like people coming together,
Yeah.
Different cultures. It's beautiful.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, someone asked me, well, why not first name, middle name, last name? And I said, because it's not culturally inclusive. If you go to other cultures, the concept of first, middle, last name are different or don't exist. So at least by default, full name is culturally inclusive. And when you ask somebody their name, they'll tell you, and you can input it that way, and it's inclusive to that individual. And when you're from a different culture where you're having to fight that battle with the first name, last name, it's tiring and it's tedious. It's like when you have someone misspell your name. It's that kind of thing. You have to deal with it your whole life. And, attention to detail is important, and being culturally inclusive is very important. So that's one of those little details of my thought process in making this thing.
Well, I'm sure the people are really going to like the idea that you're actually thinking about these types of things and not just enter data, spit out information. You're a human.
Yes. Well, some people say I'm not, but I'm about as human as Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. So there are a lot of little changes, like the share button now looks like a button, so that because people were trying to tap on the share button or the share form text and not the icon.
Oh.
Well, now you can tap on the text and it will open the menu like tapping on the icon. So it's a lot of little usability things like that are improving iteratively every couple of weeks. And
that's fantastic. I can't wait to go try it out again.
Oh, thank you. And there are some interesting use cases that I hadn't considered. And one that you told me about was using the multi-address to mark tables in an address.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had a discussion with someone about that. They went to a normal rally, and they wanted normal NORML to be able to use it to take surveys while at a tent, right? And so they're standing at a table, and they have 100 people in a line, and they could use it in that format.
Right. Wasn't designed for that, but like I said, using it in ways it wasn't intended, and that's not a bad thing. I just have to know that it's used that way and design it in such a way that it can be used like that without, having the little details be weird.
Oh, okay. So since there is a workaround, will you also be considering adding to it so that it could be...
Oh, absolutely. One commonality there is someone wants to use the canvassing app to phone bank.
Yeah. Not even leaving your house.
Right. So it's about having the app show up in a way that it can cater to situations where you're not going to be walking around a neighborhood. Right,
because canvassing doesn't necessarily mean going door to door in a neighborhood.
Right.
Gotcha.
And what some canvassing app has is they have a map view and a list view, and that's a little complicated in that the list view, people have some assumptions about the ordering, and I'll have to figure that out. But that's kind of the direction I'm headed with that, is rather than staring at a map, is you stare at a list. And that's kind of what the multi-address thing is you go from a map to a list.
Interesting. Okay.
So I just have to figure out how to organize the data and how to display it, and then ta-da, use it more easily for something other than knocking on doors.
Fantastic. Yeah. Because this app is definitely not just for that. However, that's a primary function. Well, Corey, it sounds like you've been really busy and you still have your full plate. It's like a never-ending dinner for you, huh? You just keep eating.
Yeah, I think working myself out of a job in this case is never going to happen.
That's a good one.